All right. It looks like we've got a few more people, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. First off, welcome to Tech Tuesday. My name is Tom Levine. I'm Cornerstone's tech guru, and well, I may not be a computer scientist. I know a thing or two about computers. One of the things I interact with regularly are Windows systems. So today we're going to be talking about some of the basics of working with Windows 10 and how you can maybe up your game as far as computer basics are concerned. We're going to kind of cover the basic areas of your Windows desktop and some ways to customize your computer for ease of use. We're going to end on how to find files as well, but our next webinar is going to focus a lot more on that, so stay tuned. Also, if you're already comfortable with the Windows desktop and File Explorer, then this probably isn't the webinar for you. Our next webinar on the 9th is going to be for beginners, so that might be a little bit more helpful. A lot of what we're discussing today are going to be bare bone basic things and stuff that, someone new to Windows 10 might need to know, and maybe how to operate a computer. Also, if you're just looking for a few tips and tricks, I apologize in advance. I get a little bit long-winded, and I don't tend to do tiny little tips. A lot of people who are new to Windows just ask for like one or two things and then they move on. But that's very comprehensive, and it leads to people knowing how to do one or two things, but not understand Windows. So I'm probably not going to focus on that either. But before we really get into it, I have a few housekeeping things to bring up. First, if you have a question, please type it into your questions box. You should see something like this on your screen as you're watching this webinar. And if you have a question during the presentation, please type it into the chat. I will absolutely be following up on any questions that you ask. And we're going to get back to it at the end of the presentation. If you type something that I think is pertinent to what I'm covering, then I'll absolutely bring it up as well. So please feel free to ask me any question that comes to your mind. Also, feel free to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our weekly Monday Minute newsletter for the latest Cornerstone news, carrier, and industry updates as well. You can also reach out to me directly at the number below and at tlevine@crnstone.com. I'll put this up again at the end for you as well. And last but not least, don't forget to sign up with our Refer an Agent program. Do you know another agent who might benefit from working with us? Well, feel free to refer them. You can refer individual and employee benefit market segments to Cornerstone agents. We'll pay you $250 when that agent places their first application. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Submit your referral, we track and monitor it over the next 6 months, and then once your referral submits business within that 6-month period, you earn your money. So feel free to reach out to us directly and refer some business. Maybe you'll get paid. So that brings us to our presentation on Windows 10. This is a Windows 7 desktop that I'm showing, and the image quality is kind of bad, but I think you get the picture. This desktop is really cluttered. There's a bunch of different icons. It's a little bit difficult to see, and that's one of the things I'm going to recommend trying to prevent. Today, like I said, we're covering the basic areas of your desk or your Windows computer. The desktop is the first thing. The desktop is that area that you see once you log into your computer, first thing. It is sort of like I think of it sort of as a physical desktop. It's a desk and it's meant to sort of hold what you're working on, not so much something like this. A desktop that's this cluttered is not conducive to working. And it's one of the first things I see when I see people who are new to Windows. People tend to not know where to find things, and they create a bunch of links and save things here to find them, and it's not very helpful. So this is the most basic part of your system. Don't make it look like this. I'd recommend you just show a bunch of shortcuts and links. And to explain the difference, let's go to my desktop so I can show you what I mean. All right, so this is my personal desktop here at Cornerstone. As you can see, I've got a few different icons, not too many. I try to keep it pretty clean just because I think that's a little bit easier to work with. But here we are. So this is sort of what it looks like. These little things are called shortcuts, and what they are they're links to different programs. When you fire up your computer for the first time, you'll probably see something like this, the recycle bin, and maybe Microsoft Word. You might see an icon for Internet Explorer or Microsoft Edge as well. All of them will have this little icon right down here that I'm circling with my mouse right now. This icon right here, the little linky looking doodad in the box, that indicates that it's a shortcut, not an actual file. And shortcuts they tend to be what I try to limit myself to on my desktop. If I have a bunch of physical files here and I'm trying to find a specific one, like a PDF, if I have a bunch of them up, then it's going to be difficult for me to find just on site. So I tend to shy away from saving things like that. If you do have an overly cluttered desktop, or you save a lot of things on your desktop, you've probably had similar issues with finding things. I think of a desktop kind of like a notepad. So if you do save a physical file to it, it's good to save it there and then move it to somewhere more permanent. And in order to do that, we would open our File Explorer. File Explorer is this little icon here, and it's kind of a staple of Windows. I'm going to real quickly move it to the desktop, just like this. Well, if it gave me the option. Oh well. But it's this little icon here. It'll be on your desktop as well, and other file sort of link locations will look like this as well. This is a folder that I have on my desktop, which means it is saved here physically. One thing to note about your desktop as well is it's a part of the Windows core file system. This means that the desktop is an area that your computer thinks of separately from the rest of it. If you save something here, then you search in your computer for it, you'll find it, but it won't be the first thing it searches. So saving things to the desktop permanently, not something I would do. Think of it like a physical desk, or what you have that you're sitting in front of now. Would you let everything you've ever worked on pile up in one area, or would you rather keep things filed, neat, and organized? It's the same thing for computers. Too many files on your desktop not only makes it hard to find things, but you'll also scare me. No, you'll scare any IT person who looks at your computer, because it's meant to be sort of a placeholder, like I said. Do not save things here permanently. By default, this little icon here is your recycle bin. It's also saved to your desktop, and I would not recommend moving it from your desktop. This is sort of where anything you delete on your computer that is saved on your computer goes to. For example, this image that I have saved on the desktop right now. I'm going to go ahead and delete it, and there are a few different ways that I could do that. I could right-click and then scroll down and hit delete, which I'll do now. Or I could drag, like I'm doing with this shortcut icon here, and drop it into the recycle bin. As you can see, the recycle bin now looks like it has paper in it, and that means there's stuff in this file. If I sort of mouse over it, you can see a little icon there as well, or a line of text. It says contains the files and folders that you have deleted. That sort of is a description of what it does. If I double click on it, which I just did, it will actually open up the recycle bin in your File Explorer. And what this recycle bin is, right over here, is just the place where things go to be deleted. So if you delete something on your computer and you're not sure where to find it, the recycle bin is probably the first place I would check. Now I'm going to use this image later on, so I'm going to move it out of this recycle bin. And there are two different ways I could do that as well. I could grab it like so, but I'm just left clicking and dragging and let go of it onto the desktop, and that'll move it back and restore my file to the desktop. The other way is to right click on it, and typically if it's a file, I'm gonna move this back in as well. As you can see, I deleted it and moved it back in here. I can right click on the file and hit restore, and it will move the file back to where it was originally. For folders like this one that have other things under it, I can click and drag and drop to the desktop, and that's how I would restore those files. If I hit exit, or this little red X icon up here, then I can close the window. And that's something that's true across all of the Windows line. The first thing you do if you're trying to shut down a program is hit that red X. Additionally, just some key functions to note before we move on to a separate section of this is if you want to interact with something, you can left click once, and that will select what you're viewing. If you want to open something, just clicking one more time won't do it. You have to do it in rapid succession, or you click on it once and hit the Enter key on your keyboard. If I double click Shortcut, I have a bunch of files in here, and that's how I would open it. Also, if I double click this image, that's how it opens up the image file. But if you want to do something more than just move it around and open it, then it can be a little confusing at first, especially if you haven't interacted with computers. In order to interact with something in a little bit more depth, you can right-click on it. Right-clicking on something tends to give you a list of general options of things you can do with it. As you can see, the first link up top is open, and that just is a quick way to open something if you want to be sure that it will open. You can also tie it into a few common options that it lists up above. Things, because this is a picture, it sees it as media, and it wants me to either create a new video, edit it with a program called Photos, edit it with a program called 3D Paint. I can set it as my desktop background now quickly, though there is another way to do that, which we're going to cover in a second. Or I could edit the picture, or what it says here isn't actually editing the picture, but I can edit the file itself by clicking on Edit. Or I could quickly print it by clicking on Print. I can also quickly interact with the photo by rotating it through these options here. Or I could do some more advanced things with casting and sharing, which aren't really basic, so I'm not going to get into too much depth here. But as you can see, there are a whole bunch of different options that you can do things with when you left click instead of just right clicking and opening. So if you're trying to do something a little more advanced, like move a file, besides just dragging and dropping, this is what you'd use. You can use the Send To section here to get into that in a little bit more depth. As I scroll over it, you can see this little arrow icon over here. That means that there are more options under this selection. And as you can see, I have a bunch of different places I could move this file to. Now, if I've already moved it somewhere and I forget where it's moved, then there are a few different ways that I could find it. For an example, I'm going to move this real quick to, let's move it to a file location here. This is called the File Explorer, and this File Explorer is actually the core component of how you interact with your system. Local disk C is the drive that will universally be your main hard drive on your computer. Think of a hard drive as sort of your long-term memory. It's something that you use to store files more permanently on your computer. The user section under your local disk is going to be the first area that you should go to if you're going to save a file. Now, under users, you're going to see a whole bunch of different users listed. Typically, you'll see just an admin folder in your profile folder if you're using a personal computer. My personal name is T. Levine for Tom Levine, and this area leads to all of what I actually have on my computer, not just this desktop. Like I said, a computer is like a desk. The desktop is like the top of the desk. This file system under local, users, T. Levine, are like the drawers that are within that desk. I can file things using the native Windows Collections file system, if I so choose, which has the desktop, as you can see, as a little icon there. Or I could choose to save things under documents for different documents and templates I have, or downloads. This is where things that you download off of the internet will go. Favorites are things that I would use frequently on the internet. So things that I have saved in my favorites bar on my internet browser. I also can access links, music, pictures, and all of that sort of stuff in here. But one thing that Windows does uniquely is when I save a picture, it doesn't automatically put it under pictures. It will save it to wherever I tell it to save. So if you're going to make use of these folders right up here, you have to make sure that you're actually putting files there. If I go to pictures right now, just as an example, I have camera roll and saved pictures. These two folders are automatic folders that come with your desktop. You can save your pictures here, or you can use camera roll if you're taking pictures with a camera. Pictures tend to automatically fill here. However, you can change that in most programs. So if you haven't changed where you're saving things, it's likely either under camera roll or saved pictures if you're using a picture. If you're saving a document, it tends to direct under documents or downloads and things like that. Screenshots here is a folder that gets automatically created when you take a screenshot. I actually accidentally took one when I was setting up this presentation, so it saved it here. But let's say I wanted to create a new folder in this file to save something. Let's say I want to create something exclusively for my Tech Tuesday picture. I can right-click to bring up my More Options, and then I can click New Folder. And as you can see, because I right-clicked, I get a bunch of different options. When you create a new folder, it will automatically just say New Folder, and I can start typing things like backgrounds as example. And if I click off of it, then my background folder is created. Let's say that before I move a file in here, I named it something wrong, or I had a typo. Or in this case, see that my backgrounds doesn't have a capital B, but everything else uses proper casing. And I want to fix that. Well, there's no direct way to just click on it. And if I just left click, I don't have any way to rename it. But like I said before, if I want to bring up an advanced option, I can right click. And as I scroll through here, I'm just going to go slowly line by line. Down at the bottom here, I can do rename. And rename lets me actually change the name of either a file or a folder. And I'm just going to input a capital B there instead. And then click somewhere else. and that folder should have saved, like so. For some reason, that isn't updating today, probably because it doesn't like me. Let's rename it something a little bit more important. Let's say background saves, and then it'll update casing. I think it was just because I had the same name there. Then I can move this image file by right-clicking, send to. Oh, wait, I can't do that. See how the send to doesn't let you move it directly anywhere? That's because your desktop is, like I said, a placeholder. You're not supposed to really be able to fully interact with files there. The way around that, though, is dragging and dropping. Remember when we interacted with the recycle bin, how I was dragging and dropping files in and out? I can do the same thing here. If I click on the image file that I want, select it, then click, hold, and move it, I can hover over where I want to move it back into, which is our file system, the File Explorer. If I let go, then I have the image here. If I then click and drag it into the new folder that I created, background saves, and let go, then the picture is now under this file. I'm just going to double click on the file to access it. And as you can see, we have our picture here. Same way that I double clicked on the icon for shortcuts to access it there. One of the other things that people get confused about when they're interacting with this sort of file system is that they don't know where things save to exactly. This little section up here that I'm going over, the little folder icon here, and I'm actually going to try to draw and circle it for you right here, or use the spotlight. But this right up here, if you can see at the top bar, that's actually the address for where I've saved it. So what that means is that I have saved this picture under my local disk, under the users folder, under the Tom Levine users, under pictures, and under background saves. That's sort of how I like to navigate around. And I'm going to exit. So now I have that file saved in somewhere a little bit more permanent. That's sort of the basics of interacting with files, but that's just the desktop. We do have a few other sections I'd like to cover, mainly this taskbar. The taskbar is this bar at the very bottom of your screen, but on some computers, it won't always be at the bottom. Suffice it to say, if you see a bar like this on the bottom, top, or sides of your screen, that is called the taskbar. The taskbar is kind of similar to a desktop, except it's exclusively for icons. You can't save a file permanently to it, and it's not used as an actual location to save things to on your desktop. I like to fill it with programs that I use frequently because it's small, it doesn't take up any real room on my desktop, and I sort of know what it is by sight. You can also make this smaller by going into other settings, which we'll cover in a moment. You can actually get something here by pinning it. And to do an example of that, I'm going to pin Microsoft Publisher. If I right-click on the icon and scroll down, I see Pin to Start. Pin to Start is not what I'm looking for, though. The Start menu is something we're going to cover next. But I'm going to pin it to Taskbar, which is that bottom bar. When I click Pin to Taskbar, the icon for the taskbar pops up right down here. That means that if I click on this, it will actually launch Microsoft Publisher. I'm going to exit out of that because I'm not going to use this program. Next up is the tray. That's this little caret key. The tray is an area of your computer that is used exclusively for like notifications. These little icons here all stand for different programs that my computer is running, generally in the background. And if I click on them, I can get more options. This is also an area that I'm going to really bring up if you're new, exclusively for if you're using thumb drives like this one. I'm going to put this thumb drive into my computer, and it'll give me a little notice, and it'll tend to immediately open up this thumb drive. The reason I'm doing that is to show you something that happens in this tray. In Windows 10, if you see this little icon here in your tray, so if you safely remove hardware and eject media, I'm going to click on it for you. And it opens up a tiny little window. That window has one option. Well, two really. I can open my devices and printers, which isn't something you'll typically use, or I can eject the disk. Ejecting the disk just tells the system to check and see if it's doing anything on the USB. If I click eject disk right now, it'll close out of whatever I'm using, and it'll say it's now safe to remove that USB. If you don't do that, then it's possible that you'll actually have a file open when you try to remove your thumb drive. And if you remove something while it's open, you stand a large chance of either corrupting the file or you can destroy it completely and make it completely unusable. So whenever you're removing anything from your computer, not really devices, but I mean things with memory, you're going to want to do that. And when I remove it from my computer, now that it's safe to remove, it tends to give me an audio notice as well. The next section over here is just date and time. I can also adjust volume and access my internet settings by clicking on these icons below. Internet settings is right over here next to the tray. The icon that looks like a speaker with sound waves is my speakers. If I click on that, I can adjust my computer volume with the slider. Or I can even access more of a calendar if I click on the date and time. That's what makes this taskbar here invaluable. A lot of times people will try to get like a big image for their computer to see like a clock or something like that. And that's sort of what the taskbar is for, in my opinion. To the far right of the taskbar, there's also this notification window. I'm going to click on it real quick. This notification window are for things like when you receive an email, it'll notify you, or if something's happening with your desktop or your security, it'll notify you here. That's why you probably see little icons down here from time to time. This is sort of how you would get in to some of those as well. But for a beginner, you probably won't necessarily need it. The last area of the main screen that I'd like to cover is your start menu. The start menu is this little Windows icon here, and you can get to it by clicking on start to bring it up, or by hitting the Windows key on your keyboard, the one that looks like a little Windows, or maybe it'll say home as well. Different keyboards use different things. But this is sort of like a dashboard almost of things you can access on your computer. This little documents, click right here, links to that document library I mentioned earlier. Or even better, if I click on pictures, that links me directly to that pictures library. So where I have all my pictures saved that I brought up earlier as well. Now, if I click on it again, I can also get into my computer's general settings here, which we're going to do in just a second. Or I could even turn it off with this power button by clicking power and then clicking one of the options up above, like sleep, shut down, or restart. Sleep just puts your computer into a low power mode. Shut down turns off your computer entirely, and restart will turn off your computer and then turn it back on. which is something you'll want to do if you're actually getting an update. You also can look through here to see any program you have recently used on your computer. As you can see at the top, I have GoToWebinar and GoToMeeting because I'm actually using that right now. It's something I've recently used, so it goes under the recently added section. And then after that, everything is organized alphabetically through here. So that's a quick way to find any program you have installed on your computer. Additionally, we have this window over here. This window is where things go when I ask it to pin to start. I'm going to use Publisher as another example, and I'm going to right-click it again and hit Pin to Start. Now, as you can see, nothing new popped up down here. But if I click on Start, I now have Publisher in this new row. That brings me to the next best thing about this little home screen, naming groups. Whenever you add things, you will create a new group of programs in your Start window. As you can see, I've got Microsoft stuff here. I've got my productivity for sticky notes, and I've got my new group that was just created because I added Publisher. Now, if you don't like the look of your layout or anything, it's as simple as dragging and dropping. Same with the desktop. If I click on sticky notes here and drag it around, I can sort of move where it's docked. And I'm moving sticky notes now directly to the left. If I wanted to create a new group, I could click on an option and move it around or below things or above things. I'm going to move it below Publisher and let go to create a new section. Then I can name that section by double-clicking on that taskbar, or I could right-click and unpin the group from Start. I'm going to call this Ring. And I just double-clicked and typed Ring, and then clicked off to rename it. If I wanted to consolidate things a bit, then I could click, drag up, and I'll move Publisher into the same row now as Microsoft stuff. If I then wanted to get rid of the Ring section here, I could click, drag it up into this section, and let go. And I'm going to do that again because I did do that a little bit quickly. But all I did was click, drag it up and over another icon, and let go. That got rid of my Ring group and moved it back under Microsoft stuff. Now, after all that, you're probably wondering about the biggest part of this presentation. Tom, how can I find my files? Well, it's pretty easy. If you're really trying to search for something, there are two different ways that you can do it. I'm going to show you the easier one first, and then I'm going to show you something more of the professional one in our next Tech Tuesday. That involves more interacting with the file system directly. But for now, if you're trying to find something and you have it saved to one of those media folders, you click on the Windows icon, and then you'll just start typing. I'm going to type CORN, and that'll search my entire library for anything related to corn. It autofills what I think I'm looking for and gives me my best match here. This is pulling up a system for a report that I generate internally, but I can also use my arrow keys to scroll through what I'm looking at here. It'll give me settings. In the settings section, it thinks I'm trying to type, automatically snapping windows to the sides or corner of the screen, or it'll even search the web for me. For instance, it's searching the web for corn right now, or Cornerstone, because I search for Cornerstone a lot, or cornbread recipes, because I'm an avid cook. A lot of these results will be customized to you. If I'm trying to find a specific program, let's say Publisher, then I can just type it, Publisher, and it'll bring up the Publisher program as the best match. It'll also search the web for Publisher in this bar over here. Once you've found something that matches your selection, for instance, publisher, which is auto-selected for me right now, then it'll bring up this area over here on the right. This is all of the different options that I can do with Publisher from the Start menu. This includes opening the program, running it as an administrator, which you don't need to worry about, opening the file location, which is exactly what you would do if you're trying to find the file, unpinning it from our Start menu, unpinning it from our taskbar, or even fully uninstalling the program. I'm going to take this opportunity to unpin it from my taskbar and unpin it from Start. And I just clicked on those two options. If I then wanted to repin it through this menu, I would click off of it, click my Start menu again, and type PUBLIS, pull it up, and then click Pin again. And now the publisher icon is pinned again down here. I'm going to unpin it manually by right-clicking and hitting Unpin from Taskbar. But that's generally how you'll find programs you need to access if you don't have it, on your desktop and you don't have it elsewhere. Real quick, before we get into personalization of your desktop as well, I want to show you how to actually create one of those desktop shortcuts. If I go into Shortcut, or actually even better, let's use that image file again. I'm going to go to my File Explorer and use the Quick Access toolbar on the side over here. This would be on the left-hand side of your file manager. And I'm going to click on Pictures, Background Saves, and let's say I wanted to make a shortcut to this specific file. The way I would do that is I would right-click on the option, and then scrolling through here, I can go under Send To and Desktop. And what that does is it creates the shortcut. Just to be very clear about it, because I think I didn't really fully elaborate earlier, when you create a desktop shortcut, what you're doing isn't actually saving the file there. What you're doing is you're creating a link to where it's saved. If I scroll over the shortcut, which I am now, you'll see a little blurb pop up. That blurb is cornerstone.jpg, which is the name of the file, along with the fact that it's a shortcut. And then under that is the actual physical location on my computer, using that top menu sort of speak that I mentioned. If I hover over it again here, it says C-users-T Levine-pictures-background saves. And that tells me where the link is going. I use link and shortcut interchangeably because they're essentially the same thing. They're just a direct way for you to get to information you have saved elsewhere. If I wanted to delete it, I could right-click on it and hit delete. And I'm going to exit out here. And that brings us to personalization. There's a lot of different things you can do to make your actual desktop really pop and really yours. I personally never have my desktop set up the way it is now. I always like to modify where my taskbar is, change different sizes of things, and change my desktop background to really fit who I am. And I'm sure a lot of you also would like to do the same thing. In order to do that, I'm going to hit the Start menu, and I'm going to hit the gear here for settings. That'll bring you, and I just had to drag it over from my other screen, to this window. This is called Windows Settings, and it adjusts all of the main settings on your computer as far as text and speech, different apps you have, your internet connection, different devices you have connected, your ease of access things, like magnifying your computer a bit, adjusting the contrast settings and things like that, your search, your other different things over here, most of which you won't need to access. But the two important ones that you'll really want to use are personalization and system. I'm going to start with personalization because that's really what you'll likely be interacting with most often. Personalization over here lets you edit the feel of your desktop. As you can see, I have a background right here, and it sort of shows me what's going on my desktop. I can use a picture, a solid color, or even do a slideshow of pictures for my desktop background. Picture is what I have now. Solid color is just one color. And slideshow are multiple pictures sort of rolling through each other. So I can set multiple pictures. If I click on the slideshow setting, then it's going to ask me for a collection of pictures. And all that means is I choose a file that is saved somewhere on my computer. For now, it's using all of my pictures that I've got on my desktop, and it will rotate through those images. I can scroll down and click how frequently I want those pictures to change underneath that. So I can do 1 minute, 10 minutes, 1 hour, 6 hours, or 1 day, as far as how frequently I want pictures to change. For this example, I'm going to set it to 1 minute. If I didn't want to scroll through all of the pictures I have saved here, I could click Browse and select one of these subfolders for areas I want it to filter through. Let's use sample pictures, and I'm going to hit choose that folder. Now, after every minute, my background will change as I'm going through this. If you wanted to set a solid picture, however, you would just do picture, like so, hit browse, and then find the picture you want. Those are all the sample pictures. But if I go to pictures, just the library we had before, background saves, and click on Cornerstone, then I could change it to Cornerstone. As you can see, I've got that Cornerstone desktop background now. Additionally, it'll give you different options for how you want that picture displayed. Fill is the default option, and that just means it's adjusting the picture to fill all of your screen. Fit is another option, and what that'll do is it'll fit the entire picture on your screen, something like this. I could select stretch, and what stretch does is it stretches the picture vertically, in this case, because it's short as far as the top to bottom of the picture is concerned on my screen, and it stretches the image to fill it. If I had an image that was not wide enough to fit my screen and I hit stretch, it would stretch it in the same way, just horizontally. I also have the option to tile the picture. What that does is it sort of gets the picture in its native size and creates multiple images of it. As you can see, I've got the top image here and the bottom image here. But what tile could do is if you have a small picture of like your dog, it would create a bunch of pictures of your dog in a similar manner all across your desktop. Then I could also center the picture, which in this case won't look too different from fit. But what it does is it centers the picture in your desktop without adjusting any of the size. And lastly, because I have multiple monitors, I can click span. Now, it's going to be hard to see because you can only see one of my screens. But what span does is it stretches that picture across all of your monitors that you have set up, from left all the way to your rightmost monitor, or whichever one you have laid out in whatever configuration you have laid out. Additionally, you can get different pictures every day from Microsoft and do other different things in this Have a Question section below. But for now, I'm going to go back to that slideshow just to sort of show off some of the sample pictures that Microsoft provides. And then I'm going to turn on the shuffle option as well. I'm also going to choose the fit to be fill because I just wanted to fill the screen. Next up under here is the colors section. The color section is what you would use in order to adjust the color of different things on your desktop, or actually across all your windows that will be used on your computer. My color is currently set to custom because I don't like a lot of the default Microsoft options. But Microsoft comes with these light and dark modes. Light mode is what you'll tend to start with. And what that is sort of what this little sample image is showing you. I'm going to expand this image a little bit just to show the example more. But as you can see, it's got white general items, black actual icons, and black text. Well, more of a dark gray. And if I want to apply that setting, I just have to exit or minimize like I'm going to do now. As you can see, my taskbar is now white. If I click on the Windows icon, all of the icons here are darker in color as well. And that's sort of how it'll work. If I opened up a new window for something as well, for instance, if I opened up Publisher again, and just chose a blank, it makes sure that all of my other options here are white. Firefox is actually probably going to be an easier one. Well, not really. I have different custom settings. But if you open up like an internet browser or something you haven't really customized, that's the sort of color that it'll take on. Additionally, if I drag my settings and I move those back over, if I could find it. Sorry, my computer likes to hide things from me. So I'm going to just get back into the settings the same way I was by going to the start, clicking on settings, and going to personalization. Then I go to colors, and I should be able to adjust the actual color of my image to dark mode. What dark mode is sort of the inverse of the other option. It provides a dark background with sort of lighter text bubbles in order to actually do this. Additionally, I can turn on transparency effects, which allows me to sort of see through windows. This is not a very good example of seeing through something, but what transparency will do is it'll make it so you can see under all of those different things. And if I choose to show that accent color on my taskbar, it'll apply the transparency settings to my taskbar as well. I like to do custom, so I'm going to click custom and get into the specifics of what my settings will be here. I'm going to choose automatically pick an accent color from my background. And that means that as my background changes, it'll automatically update all the different color settings as well on my desktop. It'll also give you these recent colors here. And what that's adjusting are all of the actual accent colors of everything on your Windows computer. What that means are like the actual headers of different windows of file things you open up. For instance, if I open up the File Explorer, this top ribbon bar here is currently set to blue. And that's because my automatically chosen accent color is blue. If I want to, say, use red instead, then it'll change my taskbar color to red, the Windows borders as red. If I drag my File Explorer back over, it'll make my File Explorer red as well. Then, if I additionally adjust my colors further, I could do that under here. I could use orange, for example, or a lot of different other things as well. I can also get into high contrast settings, which is something that you'd be able to do if you have trouble seeing things, or sync settings across my devices from here as well. The last section I really want to cover in here is themes. Themes are sort of overall what all of these settings are, and it's sort of a consolidated view for what you've adjusted on your desktop. I can link quickly to backgrounds and colors here, or I could do different sounds and adjust my cursors if you wanted to get that far into it. Some people make their cursors wands. Other people make their cursors, different icons. So it's really whatever you'd like. If I click on my mouse cursor here, I can scroll through some of the different settings as well. I also have a bunch of pre-registered Windows themes that I could select, like Flowers, native Windows 10, Windows Lite, or normal Windows. If I have a custom theme, like this one, then I can click Save Theme and name it. So I can call this Example and hit Save. And now I have my example theme saved. And if I wanted to go back to it from like a native Windows theme, as I just did, all I have to do is click on that quick theme setting. And that's how I would adjust it. But that pretty much covers everything I was going to cover for basic Windows use. I know that was a lot of information, and I went through it very quickly. But just so you know, if you missed something or you wanted me to cover something in more depth, you can actually find all of our videos online. I'm going to show you where that is right now. If I go to www.crnstone.com on my web browser, I use Firefox, but it could be whatever you use. And then go under Resource Center and Webinar Series. Then we have each of our webinar series under here. If I click Access Recordings, then you have all of our different recordings, other than the one I'm doing right now, obviously, linked here under our webinar series. And you can go back and review any of our webinars. If you have any questions or comments or anything else at this point, please feel free to send them to me directly. If I open that screen up again, I'll show you my phone number and my email. I know my email address is tlevine@crnstone.com, and my phone number as well is 513-487-5390. I'm going to put that up on the screen here real quick. In our next webinar, we're going to cover a lot more of the file system, how it works, and how you can create your own, maybe, or file away documents. It's really whatever you like. We're also going to cover some of the more advanced settings in Windows, things like setting up your multiple displays and other different things you could do to adjust the actual screen itself in a little bit more of an advanced way. I hope you enjoyed this webinar, and as always, have a wonderful day and a great rest of your week. I'll see you again on our next webinar, which will be on Tuesday the 9th. Anyway, have a wonderful day, and thank you.